Welcome back to Alexander Shares the Wild. So here we are at Whitewater Draw is where I ended up at in Arizona. And it's about 20 miles north of Douglas, which is a little border town. They have some really good burritos down there. So I've been going into town to get supplies. But um, I've spent quite a bit of time here and just immersed myself in this little water, marshy area out in the middle of the high desert. And so it attracts quite a bit of waterfowl. And so I was able to film just some wonderful animals and different birds that I haven't seen, some reptiles, and even a really cool mammal towards the end. It's a collared peccary. So I put in a bit of time to get some footage of those guys. So I talk about it a little bit towards the end, but it's a very unique animal. At first glance, it looks like it's probably related to a pig, similar body type, but it's extremely unique in that it's the only species in its genus. So that was a really, really great animal to discover and see. So hopefully I'll see a little bit more of those guys. But just some really great birds. So this is a very bird-centric video for the bird watchers out there. So I thoroughly enjoyed this and just spent a number of days. So the first part of the video is quite a bit of the cranes because I just couldn't get enough. So a big part of these videos are not only just sharing the wild that I come across, but also, it's a true vlog, video log of my adventures and, for future pleasure. So I can reflect on all these great things that I'm seeing. So anyway, it's an awesome video. There's some raptors and whatnot. So just sit back, relax. It's a little bit longer video, but it should be calming to your nerves just to watch these beautiful birds and listen to me explain the little I know about them, to be humble. So anyway, enjoy, and here we go. And one note at the beginning, I do talk about it a little bit, but there's a little bit of a um, Homo sapien video. So again, the social animal comes in as part of the sharing the wild. So anyway, enjoy, and here we go. So this was a scene in the wildlife refuge. Mother had come in with her daughters and a couple dogs, and they were sitting under these trees, kind of the pre-spring shade. And she gave me permission to do a little filming, and it was just kind of a beautiful, wholesome scene of this family. And the daughter's hair reminded me of my hair when I was young. It was kind of just practically white, blonde. Of course, it changes as you get older, but it was a beautiful scene, and I talked to her for a bit. She gave me some places to visit in Arizona, and her husband are kind of homesteaders and just really nice people. So it was cool to meet them and share this. This was a nice informational board when you enter the wildlife area. And of course, you can pause and read through it, but it's good information on the cranes and kind of the history and their habits and whatnot. So, anyways, it's good information to share. So with the cranes, a lot of times you would hear them before you would see them, but this is kind of one of the main areas where the cranes would land and gather, and you could see the white specks on the water there. Those are all snow geese primarily, but this next footage is primarily of all the fly-ins. I could sit and watch these cranes fly in all day long. It's just such a majestic scene to watch them come in and chatter, and you could just tell the flock was excited, and so it was nice to just watch them come in and land. And so I took quite a bit of footage of them coming in to land, so just kind of enjoy that. Hopefully it comes across, viewing it on video, as enjoyable as it was in real life. And I'll also add that a lot of the times, just out in this area, kind of the Sulphur Valley, it's quite windy. So it was just part of the video. I deafened it down a little bit, but still it's present. And I didn't want to mute the audio completely, but because it was really nice to listen to the cranes. And as you can see here, this is looking north at the area where a lot of the cranes would land. There were other areas that they would kind of gather as well, but there's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cranes that come here, and they would gather, and it was just a really cool scene. But like I said, I just took a lot of footage of these fly-ins because it was just so enjoyable to watch them kind of fall out of the sky with their wings cupped and just navigate into this sea of cranes. In the evenings with beautiful sunsets, the cranes would come back from their feeding area. So they would move out in the mornings and then feed during the day. And then some of them would come during the day. They came and went, but that was kind of the general pattern. And there were just these beautiful scenes of just wave after wave of these sandhill cranes flying through the sunset to the water area where they could safely stay overnight in the water where the coyotes and predators couldn't get them. the next sequence of shots were an attempt to take a little closer shots of the cranes and just their kind of behavior, kind of walking around and just being cranes, being casual. So they would come to the water to get a little drink and cool off and get a little exercise. And so yeah, anyway, so these are a little bit more close-up shots over the next few minutes. So there were times when things calmed down a little bit, and the cranes seemed to be settled, and the snow geese were settled, and it was all just kind of a rather peaceful scenes, and the geese were taking a nap, floating around. So that was nice. And on occasion, the cranes would go on a little adventure across the water area, and it was always a nice scene to see that. And then here, if you see it kind of in the middle left, there's a brown crane. So I think that's one that's still in its immature plumage. So they don't develop, I guess, the red and kind of the mature plumage until they're a couple years old. So some of these cranes were just fantastically beautiful. They get the real kind of water fountain tail and a nice red cap. Just a really beautiful, elegant bird. But here you can see there were quite a few cranes that had come in. And then there were always various ducks also swimming about, and I will go through those as well. This was a nice scene. One evening, the geese had been feeding out in the grass, and then the lead goose decided to take the flock back to the water. So it was just neat to see how orderly that happened. the next sequence of shots are essentially kind of flyabouts during the day. So 2, 3, 4 times a day, the cranes or the snow geese would just take off and to the skies and circle about and make a big ruckus, and then eventually land again and then calm down again. It's an interesting phenomenon. I'm not sure why they did it, other than to just kind of keep their muscles active and get a bit of exercise, or kind of reposition. Maybe they become a little bit discontent with how they're arranged, and they just would kind of reset. I don't exactly know why, but this was a really beautiful cloud scene with the cranes flying about. Just fantastic beauty out here in this valley with the mountains in the background. So on this occasion, the cranes had taken to the skies, and there was a huge ruckus. And then there were also the snow geese flying about. So I have some really good footage of them coming up here as well. So here you can see that all the cranes kind of push towards the water, and they just seem to be somewhat discontent and unsettled. And then up above, the snow geese had taken to the skies with some of the cranes. So just a lot of communication and chatter. It was all very interesting. But these snow geese just went through some beautiful murmurations in the skies as they just kind of flew about, much like a flock of starlings or blackbirds that you'll often see. They tend to do murmurations more so. But this is very beautiful with these nice white snow geese just kind of articulating around in the sky. So it was really a beautiful scene to watch this. And eventually they kind of get arranged and then come back in waves to land again. And like I said, this would happen a couple, 3 times, several times a day. and eventually everybody would land and get settled again, and then things would slowly calm down. So this next footage is kind of another behavior or aspect to the cranes. So these are the farms around surrounding the wildlife area. And so the cranes, when they flew out in the morning, would go to these cornfields and try to find just some loose corn that inevitably gets lost during harvest. So they would just kind of graze around, and they were pretty efficient with their nice long bills at just flicking the dirt around and finding kernels of corn. So it was kind of fun to watch them. It was a beautiful scenery with the cranes and then the kind of iconic farm scenes and equipment in the background. As you can hear, it's still good and windy. Every day it seemed there was a bit of wind. So this was one morning I woke up and there had been a blizzard overnight. So my truck shook, and there were, I think 50, 60 mile an hour gusts, 70 mile an hour with snow. And so this was the scene in the morning, which was actually quite beautiful, but it was 18 degrees and had to heat up the little truck, and it was fine. But the cranes the day prior flew out, and it's almost if they knew something was coming. And so this next footage is the cranes just, I think it was over maybe an hour or two, just taking off in waves and then flying off to wherever they knew it was suitable to ride out the coming storm. So it's so fascinating, the intuition of animals, and they seem to know just inherently about weather before it comes. So it was interesting. They would all just move over in almost kind of the runway lane off to the back right. And so they would move out, and then they would, a bunch would take off. And so it was just a wonderful scene to sit there and watch them take off. And they would get excited and start jumping around and flapping their wings and kind of getting ready for takeoff and get a range. So it was a neat scene. And as you can see, eventually there were just a few left, and this continued until they were essentially all gone. So they moved out. They knew that this was not the place to be. So that was the wonderful and beautiful Sandhill Cranes. So I took quite a bit of footage. I really wanted to make sure I documented that experience. And then other waterfowl, these were beautiful little green-winged teal feeding, and they are an absolutely stunningly beautiful little bird. Nice iridescence on their heads and then their wings. And I have a good capture. These are two females, and you can see the green. Just beautiful. And this was a new bird for me. It was a vermilion flycatcher. And the moment I saw it, I was just like, holy cow, what is that bird? So it's almost a shiny, iridescent, metallic red on the males. The females have an orangish, reddish color, and they're almost equally as pretty, but the males are just stunning right now going into spring. So it was a rather fleeting bird. I would get close, and then he would take off and go to another perch. But here there's a little slow-mo. You can see him pecking off a little bug or insect. Very, very adept at being a flycatcher. A lot of times just snatching flying insects out of the air. This was a nice scene with the cranes and geese in the background, with the flycatchers sitting in the bush here. And then I do a little macro on them, with a little magnifier here where you could see them a little bit closer. Just a really beautiful bird. And they're primarily live in the south. So this is a northern harrier. It was previously known as a marsh hawk, and some people still call it that. They do tend to hang around marshes, but not always. But they're all around out west and southwest. I've seen them here and there, so they're not necessarily a rare sight, but they're a beautifully adept raptor at just cruising over the shrubbery and very maneuverable, and they'll dodge back and forth and just kind of do a surprise attack on whatever they see as they fly over. So very unique bird, and one thing that you can identify them with is they have kind of a white band just at the upper part of their tail. As they're flying, you'll see that. And here as he takes off, you can see how quickly they just go right into hunting mode. So he pitches out, and then I think there was a little bird there that he almost took a chance on, and then some doves are of course scared of him, and they fly out from in front of him. So just a pleasure to watch this bird. So here you can see the little animal sleeking along in the open grass, and that was a roadrunner. And I did get another sighting of a pair. So this is the first one, just beyond the barbed wire along the road. Very iconic kind of scene, but just a very unique bird. Nice long tail, and they're quite sizable. And they're also, predator. They eat little snakes and lizards and insects. A nice little cap on them that they'll fluff up, and kind of a top notch. But a nice big bill on them for attacking, small animals. Very aware, And they are fast. The one that was out in the open grass would start running, and it was a pretty quick little animal to watch. So I stayed long enough in the wildlife refuge area to where we had some nice warm days, and these lizards came out. And this was probably the first day that they had actually come out since the last warm weather last year. And so they came out to sun a bit on this pole. It's kind of a telephone pole, but it was actually in the refuge, and there was some bat houses up on top of this. I don't know the species of lizard. I'll have to look it up. So then here we have some other little ducks in here, and these are actually immature northern shovelers. And so they do change in plumage. The males have kind of a duller look until they reach mating age. And so they would often be just cruising about, feeding, and there's some kind of comical footage coming up, and some good footage of males and actually how beautiful of a duck they are. In the background, you can hear kind of a drumming sound in this scene. And originally I thought they were the northern shovelers making noise as they fed in the reeds, but on second thought, I think they're frogs. I don't know the type of frog. So here's some scenes of the shovelers, and it's almost like they would take on the formations the same as if though they were flying, kind of the V-shaped formations or in lines, and they would just cruise about, and basically they're filtering out the algae in the water. There was quite a bit of algae growing in this water. You can't really see it, but there were a little bit there, but there were just very intense green areas. And then these are some widgeon, which made some really, really cute little sounds. So this is a mature male mating shoveler, and so there's one that's almost a mature, but they were quite common. They have a nice metallic iridescent blue head, just a beautiful duck, and very nice pinstripe feathering on the back. And so these were the widgeon, and they also had some nice iridescence on them, some green iridescence with a kind of a rectangular white patch cap on the front on the males. But a rather cute duck, and when they flew, they were quite pretty as well. So I tried to get a little bit of slow-mo on them, but they would fly off into the grass and feed a bit. And here you can see them flying. Just nice white patches on their wings. Very beautiful duck. So those were the beautiful little widgeons. Really enjoyed watching them. And then here, another beautiful scene with the crane walking in the background, and then a nice male pintail duck. An absolutely beautiful duck, somewhat common like mallards, but they just have a beautiful coloration to them. And here there was a group of them feeding in a kind of a classic fashion where they just kind of turn down and have their rump sticking up in the air and as they feed for things below. As you can see, they're just a very contrasting duck and beautiful kind of rusty red coloration with that nice kind of arcing white stripe up their neck. Just spectacular, and that nice long tail on them. And then this duck, at first, I thought it was just an immature of some sort, but it was a beautiful duck. And as it kind of turned around in the sun, I could tell it was a unique duck. And so it turns out it's a gadwall duck. And it's a very pretty duck, and a little bit more elaborate coloration and plumage than you might think at first glance. But there was a nice pair of them, and they were just feeding about. So here you can see there's a little white dash and a very beautiful gray along the side, and then again some nice kind of pinstriped back feathers on him. In the evenings, the blackbirds would fly in, and at first glance you would just think they're your typical blackbird, but when the sun shone on them, it was a completely different scene. They were yellow-headed blackbirds, and you can see the little dashes of yellow on them in the setting sun here. So they would come in waves in the evenings and just fuss about, flying back and forth, and it took them a long time to get settled. So this was a good shot of them in the sun, and you can see the yellow on their heads and chest. So it was a beautiful gold yellow, and you couldn't really see it unless the sun was shining just right on them. So they would just gather in big flocks, and this beautiful scenery, and just fly back and forth and until they could figure out where they wanted to sleep for the night. And this was a lone male, rather vocal and twitching around, and it was almost like he was the orchestra leader here, the conductor, almost maybe directing where the flock should sleep for the evening. And so they did end up on one evening kind of in close proximity, landing in the reeds where he was calling from. So they would just land into these reeds and disappear. A joyful bird to watch, no doubt, those yellow-headed blackbirds. And these were just a couple little pipers just flitting about. I don't know the species of these, but they had nice long bills on them, and they were a fun little bird to watch. And here's another unique bird, kind of the southwest. So at first glance, you if you're from California, you might think this is a California quail, but it's actually a Gambel's quail. A little bit different. It has a very nice rusty colored cap on it, and then the chest feathers are not as scaled as the California quail, and then it has a nice dark kind of spot on the bottom of its belly area, which you'll see when it takes off. On the ground, there were some females and almost kind of a blonde top notch on them. It's quite interesting. And there you can see that black spot on its belly. Beautiful bird. So in and around the marshes, there were, of course, raptors like the northern harrier. So this was a Cooper's hawk, and usually you don't see him hanging out like this, but there weren't leaves yet in the trees, so he didn't have a lot of cover in this area. So he was actually fairly accommodating for being filmed. So I kind of slipped up on him a little bit closer to try to get some good footage of him with the sun in a better position so he's not so silhouetted. But eventually he flew off, and some slow-mo is actually absolutely beautiful on this bird. Just fantastically barred plumage. Beautiful hawk. This is a little bird that I saw on a couple occasions, but it was just so quick and kind of erratic in its flying about. So it would go to and fro, and it turned out it was a common yellow throat is what it was called. A beautiful little bird. And then on one evening, I was just walking about, and this little turtle had just come out of the water area, and as soon as it saw me, it went in its shell, and it absolutely would not resume its movement until later. I think it took like a half an hour or an hour of me being away, and then eventually I came back and it was gone. But yeah, he was very, very patient in remaining in his shell. So I eventually did take some close footage of him. It was very, very pretty turtle. And I looked at, picked him up, and knowing that the bottom of the turtle, a lot of times it's very ornate, but just absolutely beautiful patterning. And from the tail, usually the females will have a little thicker tail on them, so this might have been a little female cruising about. And I don't know what kind of turtle it is, but it was very unique to find this turtle out in this high desert, in this marsh area. Just a fantastic find. Absolutely beautiful shell. So this bird was commonly seen around on the shrubs here and there. And it was rather perplexing. I thought it was a lark of some sort, and eventually I did figure out it's a loggerhead shrike. It's a very unique bird. Nice mask on it, and kind of a hooked bill. Pretty cool bird to see. And then just walking around one day, I came across an ibis, which hadn't been there for the few days prior. And from this angle, it was just silhouetted. I couldn't really tell what kind of ibis it was, other than it was kind of black. Eventually, I was able to get some different footage of it in a different area with some more color. So it had some beautiful green iridescence on its back, and a very determined feeder, just poking around in the mud. And so I spent quite a bit of time following this bird around, trying to get some good footage of its plumage and kind of highlight how beautiful it was. So it turns out it is a white-faced ibis. And you can't really see the white face on it. Maybe it's not mature, but I guess when they're mature, they'll have kind of a white outline. But just beautiful slow-mo flying on this ibis. This was a nice mirrored scene with the water of him just walking along. And eventually it did take to the air, which was fantastic to be able to film. Still in Whitewater Draw on the Mexico-Arizona border, about 20 miles north of Douglas. And I'm in this little draw here. And one animal they have here are collared peccaries. So that's on the list, and there's some tracks in here in this little draw. So, and I saw a trail and I saw some rooting around. So they're like a kind of like a pig, that kind of body type. So anyway, I'm hoping to see one of those, and just got to get out and look for them, spend the time. So that's what I'm after now. I've seen the cranes and all kinds of cool waterfowl and different birds. So, but I'll show you some of this footage of the draw. Yeah, so here you can kind of see the draw. There are little canals. They get the monsoons here, so yeah, I think the peccaries use these as kind of a little highways. It's pretty subtle, but you can see signs in here and tracks, so they do navigate through here. It's more hidden, and they can slip around and then pop out and go to their feeding areas. So I don't think they like to be out in the open. But you can see there's definitely tracks in here. There's not a lot of deer, so I think it is primarily the peccaries that are cruising around in here. So we'll just keep looking. I'm pretty good at finding what I'm seeking. Maybe I am part animal, I don't know. So we'll see. So here they are, the collared peccaries. What a treat to be able to find these. I just seem to, things just come my way. It's great, but I do spend the time. So it's such a unique animal. So they have this pig-like body type, but they're so far evolved from a pig. They're not even close to a pig. So they're the only species in their genus. So they're an extremely unique animal, and it was just so great to be able to see these guys. And here a female's kind of kneeling on this pathway. I don't know if she thinks I can't see her, but the male's kind of standing guard there, a little waiting for her, and then eventually she takes off, and he's very diligent in watching me. So this is pretty far out. Luckily my camera's pretty good. I could get some decent footage, but so then eventually the male follows down the path as well. But they had been over to the right down at the marshes to get a little water. So those were all the animals that I saw at Whitewater Draw, and is absolutely, it's like a little miracle place in the middle of kind of a high desert habitat. I'll miss the cranes and all the waterfowl and different birds I saw. It's a very bird-centric area, but gosh, what a treat to have found this place, and to see these collared peccaries as well. So I have a nice little outro, so hang in there for that. But thanks for watching another episode of Alexander Shares the Wild, and we'll get busy on the next one for you. Look at this out here. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe how lucky I am. I'm just in these places. It's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.